life. Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" The man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "Right," Jesus told him. "Do this and you will live." The man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? The man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Then Jesus said, "Yes, now go and do the same."
That's a very familiar passage. Hello? Am I on? How about now? Okay, I don't care what you say, that's their fault. I can never be at fault, can I? Hey, first off, let me say welcome to all of you brave people who made it out in this Kansas blizzard. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. And then let me say welcome to all of you who stayed home in the warmth and are drinking coffee and hot chocolate and are watching us on live Facebook. I want to say, can you send us some warm hot chocolate and coffee too? Well, as you can see, we're going to be talking about what our neighbor is. And we've been singing about the love of God. And to simply put it to you this way, we are to love our neighbors as God loves us. Now you can go home. Okay, let me illustrate this. An ethics professor at Princeton Seminary asked us for some volunteers for an extra assignment. The people that came in were people that needed a boost in their grades. And so he would give them extra credit for this. There were 15 people who showed up to do this. He broke the 15 people into 3 groups of 5 apiece. The first group he called the hurry group. And he gave them 15 minutes to complete this assignment. He gave them an envelope, and he told them that they were to go across campus to Stewart Hall, and they had 15 minutes to get there. And if they didn't arrive on time, it would affect their grade. He waited several minutes, and then he sent the second group. This was give them 45 minutes. It was a low hurry group. It was 45 minutes to do the same thing, and if they arrived late, it would affect their grade. And finally, the lowest hurry group, he gave 3 hours to do the same thing. So these 3 groups went out, but unbeknownst to them, he had garnered the help of students from the drama department. And in each spot along the way, there was one student. For instance, at Alexander Hall, one of the drama students was going around and he was covering his face and he was screaming and moaning as if he was in pain. And then you get to Stewart Hall. And at Stewart Hall, there was there was another fellow that was lying face down, and he appeared to be just unconscious. And then a few minutes further, at another hall, there was finally another one, and he was acting out an epileptic seizure. Now, of the high hurry group that had 15 minutes, not one person stopped to help any one of those people. The group that had 45 minutes, 2 out of the 5 stopped to help. And out of the group that had 3 hours, actually all 5 stopped to help all 3 of those people. Now, what this illustrates today is that too many times we are too busy to help others. You ever feel that way? You feel like you catch yourself coming and going? You're not quite sure what's going on, and you haven't seen your wife in a few days, or if you have, it's been, hi, how you doing? And you go to bed and get some sleep and get up and go to work. I mean, we live in a busy world today. And sometimes we're too busy. Now, the problem is, it was the same way in Jesus' day. You may not think so. I mean, everything was at a slower pace. You did not have airplanes. You did not have cars. But people were busy back then trying to earn a living. They were trying to make enough money just to provide food for their family, just enough food for that one day. And they did not have enough time to deal with other people. As you can see, Jesus addresses this mindset. And he does that with the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, we can see the mindset of the Jewish people in the question that the Jewish leader asked. Take a look. The man wanted to justify his actions. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? You see, he wanted to justify his actions because he knew that he had not been a neighbor, the kind of neighbor that he is supposed to be. And so he was trying to justify his actions by saying, now, wait a minute. Who is my neighbor? I want you to pinpoint exactly who it is that I have to love like myself. And so Jesus comes with this story, and he tells him, and in this story, we see 4 things. Jesus tells this lawyer, this teacher of the law, and he tells us too, that we should not be selfish. We should not be too good. We should not be too busy. And we should not be too different to be a neighbor to whoever we come in contact with. Now, first, Jesus tells us a little bit about the man who robbed the people, or the man who was robbed and the people who robbed him. It says this: a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. Now, the first thing we want to look at is the Greek word for neighbor. I'm not going to give it to you. We're not going to get any great details about it. But what it means is someone who is in close proximity to you. So look to your left and look to your right. Look in front of you. Look behind you. These people are your neighbor. Even if you don't know them, Jesus says these people are your neighbor. And so, if you take a look at this, the bandits were supposed to be a neighbor to the man that they robbed because they were in close proximity to him. And yet, they were too selfish to be his neighbor. They even took the clothes off his back after they beat him almost to death and took everything he had. Their thoughts were not, what can I do for this man? How can I help him along his way? How can I cheer him up? But it was, what can I take from this man? What can I give for this man? How can robbing him benefit me? Now, let me say this. Today, many of us are too selfish to be a neighbor too. Oh, I'm not saying that you're that person that goes out there and robs someone. But when you stop and you think about selfishness, what do you think? Sometimes you think, well, it's my way or the highway. It's, I want this and I don't care what everybody else wants. And you might even say, I'm really not a selfish person. I'm really not. I wouldn't rob anyone. And in fact, I don't even have very much, and I'm satisfied with what I have. Let's put this into perspective. In America, we are very privileged. If we are sick, we can go see a doctor. We can even go to the hospital, and they can fix us up. In third world countries, the sicknesses that are easily taken care of here, people die of there. We are very privileged to have the health care that we have in this country, and we don't even think twice about it. Or what about when you came to church today? First off, you went outside, you looked, and you said, it's cold, it's windy, it's snowy, and that guy's having church anyway. And then you went back in and you looked in your closet and said, what am I going to wear? When you go to third world countries, most of those people have the clothes on their back, and that is it. Those people will go down to the river, take their clothes off and wash them while they're naked, let them dry, and then put them back on. And yet today, we had to decide what we were going to wear to church because our closets are so full. We have become so wrapped up in the deception of the American way of life that we have lost sight of how good we really have it. How many of us have more than one television? More than one car? How many of us go out to eat at least once a week? How many of us ever go hungry? You see, sometimes I think we define selfishness in the wrong way. We can reach out to people who are in need. You can do it through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries, and you'll find ways to help children with child sponsorship, or how to donate money for the refugee crisis that is going on around the world. Or you can help with West Side's Food Pantry, where we give out food to people who don't have anything. And maybe they're homeless. Maybe they got a home, but they just don't have any food, and so we give them bags of food. Or the many other ways that West Side reaches out to our community, to the less fortunate. What are you doing to be a good neighbor? Are you too selfish? We see how selfishness can cause us not to be a good neighbor. And now we ask ourselves the question, are we too good to be a neighbor? Let's take a look at verse 31. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed by him. Now we know the priest was either on his way to the temple to do ministry, or he was on his way back. And either way, he was ceremonially clean. And if he came even close to a dead person, it would defile him, and he would have to go home and clean up and change his clothes and actually go again. And so he decided that he was just too clean, too good to help this man. And he didn't even give it a second thought, and he crossed by on the other side. Wow. The priest was God's representative, and he felt too good to help this man that was almost dead. When was the last time you felt too good? When was the last time you hugged a homeless person and told him you loved him? Someone completely different than who you are. When was the last time you went out of your way for someone that was not like you? According to Jesus, whoever you are in close proximity to is your neighbor. Are you too good to be a neighbor? Many of us are too busy to be a neighbor. When you think about this, everybody is busy. We all have things on our plate. Some of us are busier than others, and some of us just can't believe how busy we are. And we get irritated because we're so busy. I remember as a student at Nazarene Bible College, I sang for the college's PR group. I played intramural basketball. I went to school full time. I worked full time, and I was supposed to have time for my wife, my children. That's tough. And I'd get so busy, don't ask Lisa this, but I'd get grumpy. Can you believe that? Sometimes I'd get sick. Too busy. Verse 32 says this: a temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Now, this temple assistant was what they call a Levite, and a Levite had lots of jobs. They were different jobs in the temple. Some of them were teaching, playing music, and doing the necessary labor around the temple grounds. And we can see a Levite's life, this temple assistant's life was really busy. And once again, he was probably on his way to the temple to go to work. And this temple assistant, the Bible tells us, actually stopped and walked over, and he looked at him. And then he passed by on the other side. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us what was going through the temple assistant's mind. It doesn't tell us at all, so you have to project this. But I believe that probably what he was thinking is simply this: this man's in bad condition, And he was thinking about all the things that he would have to do to help this man. And then he went through his mind at all the things that he had to do at the temple that day. And he told himself, I just don't have time to help this man. He was just too busy to help. You think you're that way today? Well, let me share a story with you. It was back when I was just a layman in Waterloo, Iowa. And I taught a Sunday school class of young adults. And we had a good class. And I would buy donuts. And we'd have hot coffee and hot chocolate. And we'd have orange juice. And wouldn't you like to come to my class? It was good because these young adults, they came for the food, and then I'd teach them a lesson. On the way to church, I saw this young woman alongside the road trying to change her tire. I was the temple assistant. I slowed down. I thought for a minute. I could stop and help her change that tire. I'd really get dirty, and I'd be late for my Sunday school class, and those kids would be standing there or sitting there with nobody to teach them. I probably need to go on to the Sunday school class, and I left that lady by herself to change her tire. I'm ashamed to say. Because I was too busy to help her. How many of you get too busy to help someone in need, to help your neighbor? And finally, Jesus talks about a person who is just too different to be a neighbor. Listen to verses 33 through 35. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey, and he took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man, and if his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now, to understand the significance of these verses, we must understand a little bit about Jews and Samaritans. Most likely, the man who had been robbed was a Jew, and along comes a Samaritan. You notice the Bible verse says a despised Samaritan. Jews despised Samaritans. They hated Samaritans. They wouldn't talk to them. They wouldn't look at them. They called them dogs, and they would not even say the name Samaritan. In fact, when Jesus asked which one of these 3 men were his neighbor, listen to the answer of the lawyer. He says, the man who showed him mercy. He would not even say, well, the Samaritan. He would not even say it because Samaritans were so despised. And I would imagine that if the Jews treated Samaritans in that way, the Samaritans had no time for the Jews. If you're going to treat me bad, then I'm going to ignore you too. And so when he looked at this man and saw his condition and saw he was a Jew, this Samaritan could have just walked away and said, he deserves it. And I'm not helping him because he definitely wouldn't have helped me. But that's not what the Samaritan did. The Samaritan had every reason not to help the Jew, and yet he stopped and helped. The Samaritan was too different to help. Yet not only did he help, but he also spent the night taking care of this Jew. The Samaritan's help did not stop there, but he paid the innkeeper's bill, and he told him he would return and pay whatever else was needed to pay for the healing of this man. Take a look. The Samaritan was too different to help, but with God's help, the Samaritan went out of his way to help this Jew. I want you to think about that for a minute. Would you help someone that treats you badly? Or are you too different to help people? There is so much unrest in America today. The unrest has driven wedges between races, between political parties, between police officers and communities. It is so bad that if you disagree with me, it is okay for me to verbally attack you and even physically attack you. Because we're different. Today, more than ever, we need the good Samaritan type of neighbor. The type of neighbor that is not too different. To interact and to love people not of our race, not of our political party. Maybe we should even sit down and talk to people who think differently than us. Instead of berating them and arguing with them, we love them. And we try to understand their way, but we don't belittle them just because they disagree with us. I think in America, our differences can make us great if we use them in the right way. Instead of attacking each other, love each other. Love people in spite of their differences. The only way to make order out of the chaos is to love people. No matter how different they are from us, no matter how busy we are, to love people in the same way that Jesus loved us. Because if we don't, you can know this. You're going to stand before God one day and He's going to ask you, why didn't you love people like I loved you? And you're going to have to answer. We need to love people like Jesus loved us. Watch this. In a moment, we're going to pray. We're not going to have you come forward because I believe that each and every one of us, if we had a call to come forward, would have to come forward and ask for forgiveness and ask God to help us be a neighbor. But I'm going to give you just a little bit of time just to talk to God and answer this question. Whose neighbor will you be?